Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Rouge Rugby Podcast, where we talk about real Canadian rugby. I'm Stu Hardy, joined as always by Derek Brissett. Derek, we had the final round of the Pacific 4 series, a series that has spanned from Madrid to Australia, all the way to Ottawa. And it was the final round, the final chance for the women's teams to qualify for WXV1. What did you make of the series overall?
I mean, I think it was great. It's obviously, it's great to see like women's rugby kind of expanding to more and more competitions. This was obviously super successful. We talked about last episode how they had the record-breaking crowds. Don't think they did that again this week, but I'm pretty confident that's because they played on a Friday, and it being a work day probably impacts a lot of people's ability to commit to a double header that starts at 4:00. So, that's really my only criticism of the tournament is maybe stick to the weekends for that. But it was great to see four of the best women's teams in the world kind of battling head to head for a couple of weeks. Great that it was hosted in Canada, and it was great that there was obviously a record-setting crowd a couple of weeks ago, but like TSN devoting plenty of like coverage, having like Andrea Burke doing like halftime and everything from inside the studios to like giving like time, energy, resources, personnel to making it like a full broadcast and everything. And like we said last week or whatever, TSN proudly gave that airtime to like when these games were going head to head with like CFL games, which is a huge deal to TSN. So that was great to see all around. Obviously Canada had a tough loss to the Black Ferns last week, but then bounced back nicely against Australia this week. And I'm sure we're gonna dive straight into this because there's not a whole lot of other super Canadian centric rugby games that happened other than this one. I ended up watching AFL for a lot of the weekend because once the Pacific 4 series was over, I was like, there's no Canadians really involved in a whole lot of rugby around the globe this week.
Yeah, that's a fair estimation. So let's jump right in with the game of Rugby Canada against the Wallaroos, Australia. Women, as they're better known, and it started off with a pretty, evenly matched affair. Like for the first 10 minutes, and there was no score on the board. But there's only so much time until Sophie de Goede is able to score, and sure enough, that happened around about the 15-minute mark, getting the first try of the game as well as the first conversion as well. Because what do you expect? It's Sophie de Goede, for crying out loud,
best player in the world.
Absolutely, and then Australia came back with Masters scoring a try around like the 22nd minute mark, and Canada decided, that's enough. That's enough out of you. We're not going to allow you to get away with that anymore. And from that point onward, it was Canada in full control of the game. Tries from Lachance, another try for De Goede, a hat trick for Beukeboom, and a try again from Gallagher at the start of the second half. 5 of those were converted, just to prove that Sophie de Goede is human. Okay, she can make mistakes from time to time. But this was also a defensive masterclass as well. An example of ill discipline coming from Australia, with them getting 2 yellow cards, leaving them with, at a point, only 13 players on the field. And if my calculators are correct, it was also during those periods that Beukeboom got 2 of her remaining tries, the 2 tries she got in the second half. One after Karpani got a yellow card, and just at the end of Chetham's yellow card as well. So even though there was a small period of Canada having a 2-player advantage, they didn't score in that moment, but they did use the advantage to full effect. Again, Canada's already qualified for the World Cup because of the earlier result they'd already secured WXV1 allocation. Ultimately, it's a resounding result, proving to the world that yes, there are certain other teams that are becoming more professional, such as England, New Zealand, France, but Canada, even with the disadvantage of not being a fully professional outfit, is still one of the best teams on the planet, and this game proved that.
Yeah, they are. Like, if you're questioning whether or not Canada is one of the best teams on the planet, you have not been watching women's rugby for the past, like, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, maybe. Like they've been good for a long time. I mean, going all the way, even longer. Like they got to the World Cup final in 2014, right? So
Yeah.
it's like Canada's women's team has obviously always been good, and it's great to see a game like this. Like you said, it's like the Pacific Four series has been getting some great coverage. This game was fantastic, and it showed why Canada is where they are. I mean, obviously, right off the bat, you have Sophie de Goede, which is something that no other team in the world has, which
Yep.
is a great thing for Canada, because she's the best player in the world. So, you look at her impact in this game, scoring tries from, the back of the scrum, scoring tries by bulldozing her way through defenders across the line, dominating at the breakdown, doing everything that you want a number 8 to do, making tackles, getting big carries, sucking in defenders, get some offloads away when you can, score tries. But then she also does, she's got a kicking game that would make most MLR fly halves jealous. So
Yeah.
it's like it's which is also crazy to add on to it. It's always crazy to see, especially like, well, those moments when she does score a try and then gets to convert it herself, which is always really cool, because there's no forward in the world that does that. Right. So that's obviously great to see, and it was great to kind of showcase her ability to do that. I think which kind of comes through again. I believe we did talk about this last week too. The strength of this team right now, and I know that there's a little bit of experimentation happening with the backs, as far as like, some younger players coming in, and maybe a couple different looks. There was some players in this week that didn't play last week as well, but the strength of this team, I think, really seems to be in the pack. Obviously that's led by De Goede, but like the set piece in this game was fantastic. You had obviously, a couple tries that were set up by scrums, as the platform to attack. And the lineout looked really good, and just in general play, they were dominant at the breakdown. Everybody's making their tackles. They're a very solid tackling team. That's great, which is also great to see. And then obviously, I guess the other as did you touch on the other I guess you probably did in the summary, but Tyson Beukeboom getting a hat trick in her 60th cap was just
awesome. The hat trick I mentioned, but the 60th cap as well. I think she's now she's still the third most capped women's Canadian player in history. So congratulations, Tyson. Hoping for many more caps to come. And that's the thing, as in lots of playing around, but obviously the forwards still putting in the muscle that they showed last week. Like the scrums, the driving mauls.
These scrums are insane. And the maul's nasty.
Yeah.
Like there was obviously the moments where they have the scrum, especially when the scrum was in the middle of the pitch inside the 22. I don't whether that was De Goede or another forward taking the ball to run with it right off the scrum, or a couple of those plays where they went out wide to the backs, and you had LeChance finishing a couple of those attempts too. Like they took complete advantage of that, and the set piece was great. But you touched on the rolling mauls, and like in this game, like they had like some of the nastiest rolling mauls I've ever seen. From the Canadian pack in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Like absolute destruction. As they just like, but if this is something that has put,
That was two of Beukeboom's tries were off the maul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said, if it can threaten the Black Ferns as it did last week, then it's obviously going to have an impact against the Wallaroos as well. And obviously with the WXV coming up, it's going to be interesting to see if the European teams that Canada will be facing will have devised a strategy of how to counter it. With, I guess, the only real option being is be stronger,
Yeah, well,
which
I mean,
is
like,
easier said than done.
well, I think like, see, the dangerous kind of part about that too is like, obviously they played the Black Ferns last week, and that's what we talked about last week. How it was like the forwards, seemed like they can dictate the play, control pace. Where Canada lost that game was the Black Ferns scorched them,
Yeah,
right? And like that was their back line completely carved up the Canadian backs in that game, right? And that was kind of that was the difference in that game. So I mean, like if you're say the Red Roses or something, that might be a thing that you're looking at. Especially as we did kind of touch on, there's just a bit of a new look back line for Canada.
Yeah.
Right. So at least right now there is. So that's obviously something. But that being said, it's like I thought the backs I thought were incredibly effective in this game. Right. It was, I thought it was a bit of a obviously Australia's backs weren't able to actually score anywhere near at the frequency of the Black Ferns. But I thought like, Justine Peltier, I thought did well to, get the ball out quickly. Gallagher, she scored a try herself, but her distribution, her kicking was good. Caljuvi and Corrigan seem like they're a pretty solid center combination, if not new. Right. And then obviously LaChance had a couple tries. Maddie Grant's been a solid player for a while on the team. So the backs in this game to me looked a lot stronger.
Yeah.
They all played a lot better, but it was also good to see like Olivia Apps, if she's making that transition from 7s to 15s, right? She got some, nearly 20 minutes, so like some pretty meaningful time in the game to kind of work on her craft and start continue to make that adjustment. And then Fancy Bermudez came in and played really well too in the second half, right? So
Yeah.
like there's there's a lot of kind of positives in the backs too, so I don't really but like I think if you're looking at playing Canada right now, if you're the Red Roses or anybody else that they're going to come up against in the WXV, it's like if the Canadian pack continues to dominate the way that they are dominating, led by obviously De Goede, Tutosi, Beukeboom, Forteza, Holtkamp, Sabota, Menin, Hunt, like the entire pack was incredible in this game. They're killing teams at scrums. They have one of the best rolling balls in the world at the moment. That's going to be incredibly difficult to beat, right? So you're probably looking at some way to expose holes in the backs as your way to beat Canada, because I really don't think there's too many teams that are going to be able to do it by trying to dominate Canada at the set piece or breakdown with that Canada's bringing to the table right now.
Yeah. I mean, no, you're perfectly right. As in, obviously, there's time to spot the weaknesses and work on them and deal with them. But at the same time, oppositions are going to be saying that this is where you need to target. So, but ultimately, second in the Pacific 4 series for consecutive series is. Anyway, let's talk about the other game just mentioned, because quite significantly, the Black Ferns started off this game, and then 2 minutes in, high tackle meant that their scrum half was red carded, so they were down to 14 players for the majority of this game, and as a result, the USA came back, first team on the scoreboard, getting a converted try within 5 minutes. Then the Black Ferns came back with an unconverted try before USA was able to pounce again, another converted try, and then just before halftime, getting a penalty to give them a 17-5 lead. And then in the second half, the Black Ferns came back, realized that they were the world champions, and I think scored 5 tries. And only 3 were converted, but 5 tries is more than 2 tries. The final score, USA 17, New England 39. The Black Ferns retaining the Pacific 4 Series title and confirming that the USA would qualify for WXV2. But also, so as in, it was an interesting game in terms of that player being removed from the field of play, but ultimately, the result most of us expected.
Yeah, I mean, the obviously that red card obviously had a huge impact on the game, but I don't think anybody really necessarily expected the USA to have like such a big halftime lead. And like they deserve all the credit in the world for that. It's just unfortunately the Black Ferns did put some big guns like Rouge Demont on the bench. And maybe they didn't start her. But when the reinforcements for the Black Ferns showed up, this game looked very, very different, which maybe is a lesson to the Black Ferns. Like maybe, just because you're New Zealand, you can't be underestimating teams, or else you might slip up, you might pay for it. Ultimately, it's not what happened this time.
No, but
at the end of the day, this is a pretty thorough, despite maybe a first half scare, it's a pretty thorough victory for the Black Ferns. But it's when you get to this level, like it's like every team's good. Every team's good. So it's like you gotta take every opponent seriously. And
absolutely,
if you don't put out your best, then you never know what's gonna happen.
Well, I think New Zealand are hosting the WXV1, so obviously the Eagles are one of the lower ranked teams that they be facing this year. But they'll be facing France, they'll be facing England, they'll be facing Wales as well, and maybe those teams you can't get away with a lack of discipline such as that, especially for the first half. So but speaking of WXV, that will be taking place in October and November. However, it was also announced this week that Rugby Canada will be heading to England for a 2-test series tour against the Red Roses in September. So, keeping in mind, they have just had the Pacific 4 series, so that's 3 games. Then they also had a game against South Africa. They have this 2-test series coming up against England, and then 3 more tests for the WXV. So that's a total of 9 test matches in 1 calendar year. And if I remember correctly, last year was only more games just because it was the World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, but that's, obviously the World Cup, I think, was really successful for both for world rugby and just in generally like the growth of the women's game around the world in general, but also for just rugby in Canada, right? And having the women get to the bronze medal game, I think was huge. And obviously, especially after the game against England, the big talking point was just kind of as Sophie de Goede and Kevin Rouet kept saying in their post-match press conferences, and every other player on the team would echo this the statement if asked about it as well. But the idea of more games and more resources, and there could be something really special with the Canadian women's program right now. And obviously the Pacific 4 series is awesome. It's you get the USA in there, right, which is obviously the biggest rival, and those games are always a little spicy and a lot of fun. And then you get the Black Ferns and the Wallaroos to come over too, 2 of the other top another great rivalry, and then obviously 2 of the other top teams in the world. So like you're getting that constant that constant high level competition. You mix that in with a big new yearly international tournament that's going to take place at the end of the year, mixed in with just, hey, let's go play the Red Roses for fun,
Yeah.
right, and just have some test matches with the Red Roses in England. I'm sure the Red Roses too are thrilled to get also get some extra test matches in on their own, right, and obviously with the Premier 15s. I'm calling it the Premier 15s because I'm completely blanking on what they changed the name to.
Yeah,
It's something. Either way, but they obviously there's been a lot of Canadians that have played in the Premier 15, so there's probably some relationships being built just between teammates, and so it's like I feel like those games are going to be a lot of fun, considering there might be a little bit of familiarity between some of the players there. But also, obviously, that game at the World Cup was awesome. And literally, both teams battled really hard, and it took England scoring the try of the year to beat Canada in that game.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the Red Roses games I'm more excited for the Red Roses games than basically I know the men's World Cup is later, but I feel like I'm more excited for the Red Roses games than really anything else on the rugby calendar right now.
And just to clarify, the Premier 15s have now changed their name to Premiership Women's Rugby. So
okay. So
PWR.
Is that like a little bit of brand synergy with the men's side of the game?
I believe so, because a lot of the teams have affiliates with
obviously.
the men's side. So
actually, I like that. But that's probably more beneficial for the league.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna take a quick break from 15s to talk about sevens, specifically
SVNS.
Because who needs vowels? It was announced earlier today being July 18th, that the HSBC Sevens series have now rebranded. So sevens is spelled SVNS, and it is reduced to 8 destinations over 7 months. And these destinations include Vancouver, which will be hosting their leg of the Sevens series between the 23rd to the 25th of February in 2024. So as we've previously mentioned, the format has changed. So there will be 7 locations before a grand final, which will take place in Madrid between the 31st of May and the 2nd of June in 2024. So for all 7 locations, it'll be men's and women's games, 12 core teams each, of which Canada is in both, qualifying as they go to finish that higher in their table over the first 7 of the destinations. From there, the top 8 teams of the men's and women's will face each other in a winner-take-all final at the grand final in Madrid. Meanwhile, the bottom 4 of the Sevens teams will face the top 4 from the Challenger Series, which will result in the highest 4 teams that will compete in the series for 2024-25. So there's going to be promotion and relegation at the end of this, and still has opportunities for other nations such as Kenya, Japan, Uruguay, who were relegated from last year's World Sevens series. But I'm still the mindset of the first round will be taking place in Dubai, and that's going to be in December. And I will really prefer to judge this once it's up and running, kind of thing, because the way they've talked about it in their press releases is they're saying it's not so much a sporting event, it's more of a festival event, which is that's really good.
Sevens has been marketed for forever though, right?
But now they're specifically saying that in their briefs and stuff like that. So there are a lot of buzzwords that go around which kind of give me a out of touch marketing executive approach to this. So it's like, oh, we're going to supercharge rugby's global appeal. We're going to do sevens at the next level. And I'm like, have you spoken to anyone under the age of 40?
Yeah, like I mean, to be honest, I kind of like the branding change. I mean, I know it's fun to poke fun at the fact that there's no vowels in sevens anymore, but it's uh I don't know, like it kind of looks clean, and I mean, if that gets more people into it, so be it. I don't mind it at all. Um, the thing I think I kind of still have issue with it. Like like you said, it's like I guess they're kind of talking about like moving sevens forward and stuff. I'm still not completely sold on the idea of cutting out teams like Kenya and Uruguay.
Mhm.
That
Yeah,
obviously, we were very excited when Canada beat them. Um,
yeah,
but in order to stay on the tour. But like at the same time, it kind of stinks that those teams are gone, right? And um even though they have a chance at promotion next year, it's still, very interesting to see how that's going to impact all their programs and stuff going forward if they're not competing at the top level, because now sevens has a very clearly defined like top level, right? Um, so that's kind of interesting. The one thing though, like kind of looking at the schedule that I'm like, my concern with this is obviously there's less events now, right?
hmm
And it's like looking at the schedule, you got um December December 2nd and 3rd, that's Dubai, right? You got
hmm
Cape Town the next week, and then 6 weeks off. Christmas, I guess, and the holidays may have an impact on that, but
yeah,
you got 6 weeks off until Perth, and then you have another full month off until Canada,
yeah,
so until Vancouver. LA is the week after, another month off to Hong Kong, another month off until Singapore, and another month off until Madrid.
yeah.
Um,
It's
so it's like I wonder how how fans are going to kind of react to that, and how the series is going to keep momentum going when you have these big breaks, and people, and it's obvious, and obviously as well as the seven series is happening, there's a lot of the other major rugby competitions around the world are also happening, right, and those games are going to conflict with that, as they always do every year. But I wonder
hmm
what kind of momentum the how the series is going to continue to build momentum as it goes on, when it's constantly like, when you basically have a month off, with the exception of Vancouver and LA, really, and the first two rounds in Dubai and Cape Town, and then Vancouver and LA in the middle of the campaign, how that kind of affects, um, viewership and the ability to build momentum. Um, Ultimately, though, I am both surprised and extremely happy that Vancouver is still a stop on the tour. Because
yes,
we've talked about how big of a deal that is for Canada. And when we first heard that, that cities are going to have to be cut because there's going to be less stops, um,
yeah,
I like I was concerned that Vancouver would be one of them.
hmm
And yeah, it looks New Zealand's gone.
yeah,
I mean, the fact that World like Rugby decided that we're going to keep Canada but cut New Zealand, is uh pretty pretty cool in a way.
yeah.
Especially
It's
since
all,
that is such a big event for us here. But I think
yeah,
there's a lot of question marks around the whole series still. But I do agree with your point. Like, let's see how it goes. Is like, I mean, we
yeah,
have concerns, but maybe it'll actually work out and be
yeah.
pretty cool when it comes to it.
Yeah, I think like as well, there's a bit of like where you can say like the concerns are is that there was familiar spots like Dubai, Cape Town, Hong Kong, which is like the premier
Oh yeah, those
sevens
aren't.
event.
Yeah,
Those stay, but then we've had LA for a couple of years now.
yeah,
Perth being the choice for Australia is
yeah. That's a new
definitely
one.
a
Yeah,
decision, and then ending in Madrid, so no
man.
Paris, no London,
Yeah,
not even former places like Cardiff or Edinburgh,
yeah.
Madrid. And I can kind of see where they're coming from. So the stadium
Madrid's
in
a cool
Madrid
stadium. Cool
is,
city.
yeah, it's like Atletico Madrid's stadium.
Yeah,
From what I've seen, it's very accessible by public transit, but also for a lot of the European hub, which was, the basis of rugby union, never mind rugby sevens. getting to Madrid isn't the most difficult thing in the world, especially with like the dates you have, which
I don't
I
think
believe.
any of these cities are exactly hard to get to.
No,
We have
not
we
hard to
have
get to, but
airplanes.
financially, I mean, the thing is that if I like, we can maybe say like, okay, I can justify going to Vancouver. I can't justify going to Perth, but
Oh,
if
all our
you
listeners from Perth are so mad right now.
furious, absolutely
Yeah.
furious.
Well,
But if you're you know, from Great Britain, France, or any of the European teams that are taking part in either the Sevens or the Challenger Series, then Madrid is a pretty unique destination as well. It clearly has the infrastructure to handle loads of tourists and sports fans coming in.
yeah.
So I think it is a good choice. I'm not saying that London and Paris don't have that, but I think as a cost comparison, Madrid is probably the more affordable city for travelers to go to. A lot warmer, absolutely. And, I think, and I'm hoping that it's a positive experience. The one thing I would like to know going forward is because I said the Challenger Series to qualify for that is like regional competitions. So there'll be South America Rugby, there'll be Rugby Americas North hosting their own individual tournaments, and then the Challenger Series. With the big gaps between a lot of these competitions, I would like to see like the World Sevens social media accounts posting about the Challenger Series to saying like, oh, this team's doing really well. They could be challenging for
Yeah.
entry into the 24-25 season. And
No,
then you build up towards that grand final in Madrid.
I completely agree with that. Yeah, you have to market the second division of this competition too, and then
Yeah.
give them like the resources and stuff, and yeah, make something out of the relegation like playoff games or whatever that are going to happen at the end of the year.
Yeah. But yeah, it's still got a long way to go until we get to the first round. Fortunately, if you go onto the Seven's website, which is svns.com, and go onto any of the events, they'll tell you how long it is until the next round or whichever round you want to pick. So for Dubai, we have from the time of recording 136 days, but that'll go by like that. And then soon enough, we'll be in Madrid, and then we'll be talking about the Olympic Sevens in Paris. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'm desperately seeking, like, I want to see what this festival atmosphere is going to be like, and yeah, I'm hoping for all positives. Right, we've done sevens. Let's go back to 15s, and now that the dust has settled on the MLR season, we now have our time for our end of season awards. And this year we've gone a little bit different. Derek and I will be providing our awards for our different categories, but we've also asked the fans for their answers as well. So as we're going along, I'll be providing my own answers and the fans' answers as well. But we start with our Arrows specific awards, and this is for Arrows Canadian Forward of the Year. Derek, who is your pick?
I think there's one answer to this question, and it's Lucas Rumball. He played 15 games this year, was constantly one of the best tacklers on the team, was constantly, getting breakdown steals still because he's Lucas Rumball and that's what he does. Was leading the way with carries, did absolutely everything that you could possibly ask him to do and more. And I think it's and obviously I was also the captain of the team too, so there's a little added bonus points there. I think I like looking at this team and the year that it had. I think that I feel like this one's a relatively clear answer. As Rumball, I would give my honorable mention though to Travis Larson, who I thought after he came back from injury, absolutely balled out for the second half of the season. But you got to give the edge to Rumball because he played 15 of the 16 games and was quite often one of the Arrow's best player, game in, game out, and the whole year was like that.
Yeah, so I do agree that Rumble is forward of the year. And just to be different, as I'll explain in a minute, I will pick Larson
Yeah,
as forward of the
yeah.
year because I understand and I respect the decision of going. This player played more games, so there's more to work with and more than what he's seen. But when Larson came back from injury,
Yeah, he was insane. Yeah.
he had not only like stamped his name, he nailed it in, he'd got it embossed just to make sure that everyone knew that he was getting into that squad.
Yeah.
And yeah, he had a fantastic, and it's been rewarded by being called up to the Canadian men's national team
Yeah.
as well. So absolutely stellar. He's been jockeying around from MLR team to MLR team. He's finally come to Toronto and he's finally playing for Canada, which is great to see. The fans, they agree with you, Derek. They have made this a straight shot, I think, of all the votes that were given for this.
Unanimous Lucas Rumball vote.
Not 50%
Oh, 50%.
went with
who were
Lucas
some of the
Rumball.
other names people threw out there?
Some of the other names include, well, you've got Mike Shepard.
Oh, true, fair.
For vice captain going around. Mason Flesh was also very popular as well. He received,
yeah, he was so good he was very good this year. Yeah, it was.
And as you said, Travis Larson as well. So those
were the four that got nods from the fans too: Rumball, Larson, Flesh, and Shep.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, now we move on to Canadian back of the year for the Toronto Arrows, and so I'll do mine because I think this was whilst you can argue that forward was a 1-horse race, this was definitely a 2-horse race. So I'm going to go with the lightning back work of winger/center Mitch Richardson. I think he had a phenomenal performance this year. Lots of try-scoring opportunities came his way. We can talk about the Arrows on-field record, but he put in great performances whenever he could, and because this has been like the question of if he's not back of the year, is he MVP? And it's like mixing. I'm going backwards and forwards because we don't have an Arrows MVP per se. I'm gonna go different. I'm gonna say Mitch Richardson for back of the year.
Yeah, I think Richardson was phenomenal this year. There's no denying that. I keep calling him the most underrated player in the league, and I think he is. I'm assuming because you said you think it's a 2-horse race, so if you're going Richardson, I'm assuming the other horse that you're talking about is Ross Brody. And obviously, he had 7 tries this year. A lot of them were pretty damn great too. And he's got a knack for finding the try line. His ability to just kind of snipe off the side of the ruck, especially near the goal line, is incredible. And he's another guy that just kept played game in, game out this year. And obviously, kind of, led the charge, but it's like he's one of those guys too that it's like not only does he, does he pass effectively or know when to attack, has a good kicking game, but he's also not but he's also like a solid tackler and can get involved in the breakdown when the time comes to it. And if you go through and think of like any of the think of like your top 5 top 10 Arrows tries that were scored this year, Brody's probably involved in it in some instance, right? So I think for me, I think he was just he was played just an incredible season from him. And he got a couple I think he got a couple like team of the week appearances and stuff this year too. Right. And that was just an overall incredible performance from Ross Brody. But Richardson's also, that's a great call, Stu. To pick Mitch Richardson for this. I love that.
Yeah. To go back to the public's answers, if Lucas Rumball was 50%, well, it was even clearer for back of the year, as Ross Brody got 58.3% of the votes.
So again, I ask you, who else was there? Brody.
So there was also Mitch Richardson as well. He came in second, and
Yeah.
also Kobe Faust as well.
Kobe Faust, yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
not bad.
yeah, pretty good. Okay, now we go to International Player of the Year. So this is a non-Canadian eligible player that played for the Toronto Arrows this year. I'm going to give you the fans' answer first.
Yeah.
And this was an even more dominant answer. So
We're slowly getting more
we're slowly
obvious.
getting more percentage points
Yeah.
as we go along. This was for international player. It was a clear choice. It was Lalani Faleva with 66.7%.
Fair.
So that's two-thirds of all votes.
Who else was tossed out there?
Well, there's always the fan favorite Sam Malcolm.
Yeah, of course.
And I believe there was also a couple of votes that went to Ramon Ayaza.
Oh,
So
nice. Yeah. Ayarza was solid. Malcolm was great too when he played. He maybe missed a little too much time this year, just due to injuries and stuff. But the fans are correct on this one. Luani Faleva, just the juggernaut whenever he gets ball in hand, man. Just running over defenders constantly. Like you said, it's like, man, like there's a lot of times I think like watching the Arrows at home this year, the biggest cheers of the game often follow or like came as a result of a Lonnie Faleva run up the middle of the pitch when he's like, flattening some defenders or just finds a big hole and is able to, steamroll his way down the pitch. So, I can't help but agree with the fans on this one. I think it's Luani Faleva, outstanding year, and we'll get to it later. But he got some shout outs from the league themselves as well this week too.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree. This is one of the few ones where it's very obvious who is the standout winner.
I'm looking at all the awards that were all the titles right now. This is the second easiest one to call.
Yeah. Faleva, who I believe was on the team's senior player group this year. And obviously seeing him get injured towards the end of the season was not great, but he's just been so good to see, just so good to watch him play. From what I've spoken to with fans after the game, he's very approachable. He's very much like a fan of getting other people involved. And, I'm hoping that he's back again for next season because he's definitely want to keep him around. All right. Next award we have is for Newcomer of the Year. So this is a player who played in MLR for the first time. So, and if you want to go with Rookie of the Year, then I've got to say Owen Rattan probably went, but because he was the only draft pick, he's the only one who really falls into the rookie category. A lot of these guys,
there's Bowen, there's Fatorix, Bowen's a rookie, Fatorix a rookie.
Green's there is, but that's why. So that's why we said newcomer.
Stevenson's a rookie. There's a lot. He hasn't played yet. He's been on NMLR rosters. He hasn't played.
Yeah, that's the thing of going around getting borderline things. You say, oh, is he a rookie if they haven't gone through the draft pick yet? So that's why we said newcomer. So who's the new guy that impressed you the most?
So new guy. So I mean, I know you're counting it. I'm just saying the Arrows had so many injuries this year that there's a lot of rookies that played.
Exactly. That's what I mean.
A ton of rookies that played. Like true actual first professional rugby game rookies. To be honest with you, I think in the MLR, and I'm seeing, I think in the MLR in general, I don't necessarily there's a lot of players that do come over from other leagues, and the Arrows are obviously no different. I prefer to think of this personally, and if you vote differently, that's fine. But I know how you worded it, and I know how you worded it in the polls. It's just like a player that hasn't played in the MLR before.
Yeah.
So that's probably a different answer, but I always choose to treat this award as a rookie. And
Yeah.
to that point, you're correct. Owen Rattan, who obviously, great season at flanker this year. Like you said, he was a top 5 pick in the MLR draft last year by the Arrows. Um, scored 3 tries this year, was excellent, excellent in the breakdown. Obviously, he's a flanker, right? So he's got to play
Hmm.
behind Lucas Rumball. And, you know, Lucas Rumball, James O'Neill. The Arrows back line is really good. Or sorry, not the back line. The Arrows back row is really good. But he was still able to carve out, some time. He was still able to carve out, space for himself. And, in the games that he did play in, he managed to make a pretty big impact. Came away with a couple tries, 1 2-try game, as well, right? So,
Mm.
he was, I thought he was great all year. He's the first. We've said all year too. He's the first Arrows draft pick to really make a big impact for this team, right? And I look forward to seeing how his career develops. Is he
Yeah.
on? Did he get a crack at the? No, he did not. He's on the non-traveling reserve list. I was going to say I feel like I remember
Yeah.
seeing his name on the Canadian squad, but he didn't get onto the.
Yeah. I think he played in like the America's Rugby Trophy, which was like an
Yeah.
uncapped
He's currently for
one.
that Tongan squad. He's on the non-traveling reserve
Yeah.
list.
So yeah,
Um, but so it's like he gets a little bit of that recognition from Rugby Canada.
yeah.
But I think he had a great year, and for me, I choose to view this as rookie. And maybe Deshaun Bowen would be the other player that I would have that I was kind of considering for this
Yeah.
award.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go with Liam Bowman. I think that he's
Hey,
been
yeah, no,
brought
that's a great
in.
pick. Great pick.
And he's a great pick as well. Definitely needing the backs. And I think it can be emphasized by his first game with the Arrows, scoring that try. And then the game against Nola right at the end. The game's already decided. Nola's still wanting to get another try, but Bowman's still in there. He's still fighting. He gets that intercept. He gets the try. And just to say that I'm still here, I'm still fighting, I'm still going. I really love that attitude. From what I've gathered, he's had a great impression on both Canadian selectors and
Yeah,
Arrows personnel as well. And another player I hope is back for next season as well. So because of the wording and because of the options chosen, we actually have a 3-way tie
yeah,
for newcomer of the year. So we have Ramon Ayarza being in the
fair.
front row. We have Tautalatasi Tasi on equal votes as well. But
Yeah,
if we were going by your definition of newcomer as being solely rookie,
yeah.
then the vote goes to Deshaun Bowen. Because, I mean, after his first game with the Arrows, he
Yeah.
definitely put his name
Score
on the map.
tries. It's the way to most fans' hearts if you
Absolutely.
do that. Yeah, I think see that's the thing is like I yeah, I guess with the way that this is worded, like I know honestly, I like the pick of Tassie if you're going with just somebody who's playing in their first year of MLR. He was one of the Arrows' better backs in basically every game that he played in. Not only with ball in hand, but he made a ton of tackles. Him and Richardson, I thought was a great center combination for most of the year. So I like it as if that's the definition, just someone playing first year in MLR, I like it. Liam Bowman, I think, is in that I like your pick there, Stu. But like I find him in that little bit of that gray area because I guess he technically played pro in France, but he's also only
Yeah.
21 years old, and I'm not even I can't recall how many games he actually played in France. So he's maybe like the little gray area on that one for me, but
Yeah.
I do enjoy that pick. I thought Bowman was great this year too.
Mm-hmm.
For going into next year, we may have to work on the wording of this to get
Yeah.
nail down a little bit more concisely.
Yeah, well, maybe hopefully next year there won't be so much injury so that we can narrow down the choices. Okay, right. Okay, so next award we have is MLR's most improved team. So we did give the option of 3 picks, but we allowed the fans to also give their own choice. So the 3 picks we had was Dallas, who went from 0-16 in 2022 to 2-14. Utah, who went 5-11 last season to 10-6 this season, and San Diego that went 8-8 last season to 15-1 in the regular season this year. And we had a fan give the response of DC, who went from 3-13 last year to 7-8, and making the postseason for the first time.
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like, because here's the, like, I guess it's how you want to view this. Because I think San Diego went from a decent team to, arguably the best team in the league. The Free Jacks put in a pretty good argument for them not being the best team in the league. But still, like San Diego was obviously up there, record-setting year for them. But they went from like a decent team. I kind of like Old Glory. Old Glory went from pretty bad to a solid team that maybe made the playoffs, and I mean what I still think is a pretty weak conference overall, just based on the records that made the playoffs in that conference. Honestly, I feel like my pick, just for the fun of it, is Dallas, because they went from a team that looked like they didn't belong in the league to a team that won a couple of games and honestly ended Atlanta's playoff hopes. Which is pretty, like, they looked like they went from a team that looked like they didn't belong in the league to just maybe not just bad. But part of that is that they had to play San Diego, Seattle, Utah, and Houston twice, which, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of teams in the Eastern Conference that would also probably really struggle with that. So, I mean, kind of tough for Dallas. I mean, they still haven't won a game against their own conference, but at least they're proving that, at least they proved a little bit that they could. They didn't finish last this year, which is good. They won a couple of games. I mean, they looked just in general like significantly more organized as an overall organization.
So for my choice, I'm picking Utah, because they went from a decent team to a bad team, and now they've come back to a decent team. Yes, they didn't make the playoffs, but if they had been in the Eastern Conference, they would have been second. So
it is true. So that's maybe like the indication of the Eastern Conference.
And also in the preseason video way back when, I did say that the team that I expected to improve the most was Utah. So I also feel like I should probably back that theory, especially with the results they've had this year. But the fan vote, it was another clear victory, this time for San Diego, for getting that record-setting regular season.
Yeah, and in all honesty, like that is tough. I think that's kind of tough to argue with. I think you either go. I think like this either goes to one of two ways for me. It's the way I picked, where you go from the team that was beyond terrible to maybe just kind of bad this year, or you go from the decent team to who ended up being one of the best teams we've ever seen in the history of MLR, provided you eliminate the last game of the year. But yeah, 15-1 MLR record. So I mean, it depends. I guess it depends on what way you want to go. You want to go from a decent team to a great team, or you want to go from an awful team to a somewhat bad team.
Yeah.
Right. It depends on the direction you want to go with. Utah, I find, is kind of in the middle of that, but still, it's definitely one of the teams that probably did. They ran into a tough conference.
It is what.
Don't lose to Chicago, and don't lose to Chicago, guys.
Yeah. All right. Next one, we have Rookie of the Year for
this
MLR
is the easiest category.
This is definitely easy, and I'll put this with the fan answer first by a massive amount. the rookie of the year for MLR 2023 has to be Sam Gola.
Yeah, no, that is the answer to the question.
Yeah,
It's Sam Gola. He's first team all MLR
yeah,
as a rookie on Dallas.
yeah.
Like he's first team all MLR. He honestly has an argument for being the MVP. Like,
Yeah, that's
because
fair.
picture Dallas without this dude. Like
0-16 again.
yeah, like yeah, we saw Dallas without him last year. But yeah, no, like he's incredible. Incredible at the ruck, incredible at the he's incredible at the breakdown. Incredible tackler. Insane work rate, good at carrying the ball, can score tries, great in the line out. I don't know what more you want Sam Gola to do for the Dallas Jackals, other than maybe clone himself so they have 15 of them. But yeah, like incredible year from Sam Gola. Who should be basically unanimous decision.
Yeah.
And I'm sure when the MLR comes out with their individualized rewards, this should be a unanimous decision too. And I think I think honestly, like we are the Rouge Rugby, so we're the Canadian Rugby podcast. Have to give a shout out to Jack Shaw from Rugby ATL, who had a phenomenal season on the wing there. And in all honesty, would be to me is my second vote for Rookie of the Year. It would be Jack Shaw, because I thought he was incredible all year. Scored a lot of tries. He is also getting rewarded with a shot with the Canadian national team for the Tongan tour. He had an incredible year. But like nobody's touching Sam Gola right now.
No,
like, it's his year.
Okay, and now we're going into our league ride awards. So we have the best Canadian in the Western Conference. There's far fewer Canadian names out there.
Yeah, this one's actually kind of tough.
Yeah, so
I'm curious.
And some guys were brought in like during the season. So there's a shot to say for like Kainoa Lloyd showed up for one game, scores a try
per game
in the national team. Yeah.
The best try scoring pace in the league, one per game.
My honorable mention, I think, goes to like Nakai Penny. I think he had a great season as well, getting his 50th cap with the Seawolves. Great achievement in that, right? But for time played to effort returned, it's sad that he's only basically on like what is essentially a part-time schedule with MLR at the moment, because he would have been picked up for the national team in a heartbeat. And we've interviewed him on the podcast. We've had an interview with him in the Black Box. But seriously, Michael Smith is just on another level.
Yeah. I was debating that. Smith was in my debate for sure. Man, like I find like when I was going to pick this, I think Smith played brilliantly all year. He mostly came off the bench during this season, as did Nakai Penny, as did Robbie Povey, Sears Duru, Higgins, Pryor, right? There's a lot of there's a lot of guys in the West that I feel like are they're guys that like they come off the bench. We want to shout out like Nakai Penny, which I mean I thought he was great too. He's might not even be the best 7 on his team.
All right, stop beating around the bush. Who's your pick?
My pick's DeWalt Kotze.
Yeah, okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah, he like I said, it's like he's one of the few guys that played out in the West that got consistent starts. When he didn't start, he was playing too. He played most of Dallas's matches. Right, he started in a lot of them. The 2 wins that Dallas had, Kotze had what would end up being the match-winning try against Toronto, and then he had 2 tries in the win against Atlanta. And so you take that into consideration, his actual amount of game time, the fact that I think across the board, the whole Dallas front row of Kotze, you also have Murray and Steves. I feel that like DeWalt Kotze is a lot more important to the Dallas Jackals than say, Emerson Pryor maybe to Utah, or
Yeah, I
say
get
Kai
that.
Penny maybe to Seattle. It was like
All
Seattle,
right.
Charlie Elton, etc.
Yeah,
And I think for that, just for the impact that he had on his team,
yeah.
I think it's Kotze, and he's also on the non-traveling reserves for the Tongan tour. There's
Hmm.
a lot of really good hookers
Yeah,
in Canada right now. A lot of them play in the Eastern Conference.
yeah.
Yeah, man, I feel like I'm gonna give this to Kotze. I'm giving a lot of awards to Dallas right now. It's 3 in a row to
Yeah,
Dallas.
it's fair enough.
Um,
And as for the fan results, we had Liam Murray being a popular pick,
nice.
uh,
Yeah, I like
Jason Higgins as well, Justice Duru.
yeah.
But another clear winner getting the majority of the vote, double that of Higgins or Murray or Duru, is Houston's own Rob Povey. So
Yeah.
congratulations, Rob. All right, now we move on to MVP in the Western Conference. This doesn't necessarily have to be a um, a Canadian. It can be any player from the league. So the fans vote. This was a two-horse race, and so in second place was Nate Osberger, who had a great season, especially San Diego had a great season as well. But the clear winner was Rucker Hatting for Seattle as being the MVP for the Western Conference.
Interesting. I think this is clearly Nate Oxberger. So I guess I don't completely disagree with the fans here, but I feel like I disagree with some of them. Obviously, but yeah, I mean, I thought like Oxberger making, going through, obviously switching from scrum half to the wing, and then instantly becoming one of, if not the best winger in the league. He obviously scored a ton of tries for San Diego, a ton of big tries for San Diego as well. Racked up a ton of meters, wasn't afraid to get involved in the breakdown, come off his wing looking for work. Seems like he is somehow involved in every try San Diego scores, no matter who actually ends up finishing it. And I think he just had an absolutely incredible run this year. And I yeah, man, I think it has, and Western Conference MVP to me, it has to go to Nate Osberger.
I'm going to throw a wrench into this. I'm going to go with Joe Mano for Utah.
Man, you're loving Utah this award season, eh?
I've only given them two, as much as you love Dallas.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Yeah, apparently, yeah.
but yeah,
Uh,
I think he had a great season. There could be an argument for him saying that he should have been in MLR's first 15 this year, but obviously for the entire thing, it's very tough competition. He ended up being in the second 15, surprisingly behind Nate Olsberger. So
yeah, I
um,
mean, hey, that's
yeah,
the thing when you play the same position as the as the other guy, man. It's tough.
yeah, it's a bit of a tough one to pick, but that shows just what the level of competition
Yeah,
was
that
in
position
the
is
Western Conference this year. Uh, Now we go on to the best non-Arrows Canadian in the Eastern Conference. Look, we've had a number of awards specifically for the Arrows. Let's have a look at some of the other guys in representing Canada in the East, of which there is a large contingent, mainly in Canada South. I mean New England. So yeah, yeah, New England having 11 names. NOLA only having the one, DC and Atlanta both having four, and New York having two.
Mhm.
So, I think there's a very obvious pick of where this could come from. Gotta, we mentioned Jack Shaw, gotta mention other rookie, Calito Martinez.
Mhm.
Graydon Bowd, his first season in MLR as well, stepping up to the plate numerous times as the fly half for DC.
Yep.
Kyle Bailey in the second 15 for MLR, as well. He had a great season, especially because it was only like half a season that he played. But when it comes to the Canadian in the East, there's one team that has the majority of the name that isn't the Arrows. So mine is going to a Free Jack. And, twisting it, it's a former Arrow. I'm going with Andrew Quattrin. And, he's had another fantastic season, lots of starts for the Free Jacks as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's hard to go past him, really. I mean, there's a lot of Canadians in New England that you can pick out and you can have as MVP, and I'd be like, yep, that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm gonna kind of cheat a little bit of this because I can look at my screen and see what the fans picked on this. Because I think this award I think has two options. You either go Ben Lesage because he was freaking amazing this year, or and because the fans did that, I'll go with my other guy just to give him the shout out. But I think Kyle Bailey, what a season he had, man. He went from, starting the season with injury, not even really being on a roster. The Arrows sent his rights to Old Glory. He played, and then, he played the second half of the season for Old Glory, went from not even being on that team to captaining them in the Eastern Conference Final this year. Scored a handful of incredible tries, scored a couple like really big tries for Old Glory as the season was winding down, and in order to secure playoff position and also help them advance in the playoffs too. And it was obviously was just a monster. Tackles, breakdown, the line out, everything was just incredible. Ben Lesage, dude was outstanding. But he got an MLR shield. Kyle Bailey got nothing. So I'll give Kyle. I'll spread the wealth a little bit and give Kyle Bailey my award here. I kind of spoiled the fans' pick on that. Fans picked Ben Lesage, but who else? Who else did anybody toss out in the mentions there?
So yes, Andrew Coe got a couple of votes. Kyle Bailey did as well, but Ben Lesage getting the majority. Andrew Quattrin getting it, and Graydon Bowd as well getting.
Interesting, Graydon Bowd.
Okay, and now we move on to the MVP in the Eastern Conference, and we've had this one can include the Arrows, but we threw it out to the fans, and they came back. It was basically the majority of them are all Free Jacks. There was a vote for James O'Neill.
We're not saying if that came MVP.
Yeah, we're not sure if that came from James O'Neill himself, but so the other names we have are, we've already mentioned Quattrin, Lesage. We have Wian Conradri, we have Paula Balakana, and second, we have John Poland. Sorry, in second place we have LaRue Milan, who has had a fantastic season, which is saying a lot, especially coming from.
We could speed this up if you just say the Free Jacks roster.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. But the winner by standout is Jason Potros on winning the MVP in the Eastern Conference. Personally, I'm going to go with LaRue Milan. He's just been fantastic. One of the few Namibians in MLR as a whole. But yeah, so my choice is LaRue Milan.
Yeah, I'm sticking with the Free Jack theme here, but I would go with Wian Conradri, which I guess is the other Namibian guy that's on the Free Jacks. He's among the league leaders in tackles, carries, scored a whole bunch of tries, just an overall menace on the field.
It's kind of weird that we both picked Namibians for MVP of the East.
Yeah, the most represented nations on this poll here is Canada and Namibia. So we're basically building the Free Jacks at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. What other team are you picking a player from for MVP of the Eastern Conference?
Who can you?
Really? Did anybody? You said James O'Neill got picked, which I love, by the way. That's a great shout out there. Did any other non-Free Jacks get a nod for this award?
No.
No, yeah, all Free Jacks. That is
so. It makes sense.
Considering how much this team dominated the Eastern Conference, that is the correct response from our listeners there. So we have an intelligent audience, is all I'm learning today. Free Jacks and James O'Neill, the only people that should.
All right, now we come to our final award, which is Player of the Year. So this is the best player that we can find across both the East and Western Conference. And we had no matching things for Player of the Year. So here's a full list of the joint winners for our fans' choice for Player of the Year. Joe Mano, LaRue Milan, Will Hooley, Wian Conradi, Jason Potros, Nate Augsburger, Mar Nonu, Ross Brody, John Poland, Andrew Cotran, they spelled it wrong there, and Mickey Tao, which I think it means Mikey Teo.
Okay.
Unsure.
That's a lot of lists there. Man, I don't know. I'm sticking with Conradi for basically all the same reasons I just called him MVP of the East. I'm sticking with him. That's really
just to be different, because I think it's very easy to be like, oh, I'll take the same guys that we've had already. And
that's how it should be. You should be able to win more than one award. The MLR needs to do this too.
I don't know. I think like if
you are not the back of the year, if another back wins MVP, you are the second best back of the year. That is not.
No.
That's
I'd say it's a consolation. Is like if you don't win MVP, then being back of the year.
Ricky Bobby, sense. Man, if you ain't first, you're last. Congrats on your second best back of the year award.
Okay, so between Nate Augsburger and Wian Conradi, you're picking Conradi?
Yeah, I'm picking Conradi.
To me, when I look at that, between Joe Mano and LaRue Milan, I've got to pick LaRue Milan. That just makes sense.
Yeah.
So those are our official awards. These are the awards that matter. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise, especially MLR themselves with their version of 15s of the year, which is first, second, and honorable mentions, because they're too big of cowards to just pick third 15 of the year. But we do have some Canadian representation across all three teams. So, he's the Canadian East fans Canadian of the year. Ben Lesage making the first 15. Second 15, as we mentioned, Kyle Bailey. And in the honorable mention / third 15, we have Andrew Quatrin and Andrew Coe, as well as honorary Canadian Lalani Faleva being the only Arrows representative on all three teams. So congratulations to those 5 players, and congratulations to everyone on their nominations for the MLR 15s.
Looking at the MLR first 15, I love that the top 3 most represented teams are the New England Free Jacks, the San Diego Legion, and the Dallas Jackals.
Yeah. Most improved.
Yeah, exactly. And both Sam Gala and Juan Pablo Zeiss fully deserve that. It's just hilarious to look at.
Yeah. All right. So if you're looking for any rugby action this coming weekend, good news. We have the final round of the Rugby Championship. That will be on TSN, tsn.ca, and the TSN app. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to check out more, as well as our written pieces, on our new website, rougerugby.ca. You can also find our podcast on Spotify, S4P, and Apple Podcasts. We also have a YouTube channel at The Rouge Rugby with episodes of the podcast, as well as our black box interviews with players and coaches. Make sure to like and subscribe and hit the bell notification to stay up to date with all our videos. We're also across social media, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads, all at The Rouge Rugby. Derek, where can the fine people find you on social media?
I'm at Brissette the Jet across all social media platforms, at least that I think. I have no idea how many exist anymore.
And if you find me across social media, it'll be at Hardman, spelled H4RDMAN. And that's where we're going to end this episode. Derek, thank you for joining me, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast, where we talk about real Canadian rugby. We hope you can join us again next time.